The latest body of work I've been making is the schematics, which are monochromatic, black and white pieces. What I'm doing with these is I'm laying down a very organic ground. It's all liquid graphite. And the piece itself underneath is, there's gravity, there's fluid dynamics, there's friction. It's all the natural processes that are making this, these forms on the bottom. And sometimes they come out looking like Landsat photographs or maybe Hubble shots from deep space. They're very natural and very organic. And then I go back on top of this and I will put in symbols that we have come to use to talk about the natural processes. Things, cartography, astronomy, whatnot. What we're talking about is small little, this one in particular was the last one I did, which has got fewer symbols in it. But it's also got the big sweep in it that is referencing radar, and it's also referencing tachometers, things that are control panels. You know, it's instrumentation. Some of the other pieces, a little farther down here, this one has more architectural symbols in it. There's actually layouts. I spent a lot of years working in the architectural field. This has got some references, some symbols that are basically urban planning here. The next piece is actually over top of the very organic ground. Under it, I've got the periodic table on top of this one. And it's a little difficult to see unless you get very close, but there's the chemical composition of carbon in there. There's a lot of chemical formulas in there. And it's referencing how we think about the natural world. I'm very interested in how the physical world and the mental world, sometimes I like the tight line and the loose line. I like the natural world and then how we talk about the natural world. I like the fact and then the symbol for the fact, and the body versus the mind. And I spent a lot of years meditating, and I got to the point where a lot of years, and I could finally at one point differentiate between the itch and the urge to scratch the itch, which all of a sudden there's this big, there's a chasm that showed up between the body and what the mind perceives to me. So that's a lot of what this work is about. It's about the physical presence, the earth, the body, and then all of our conceptual work that goes into this. So there's this is more mechanical, obviously, with the gears and whatnot going on in this. It's our manipulation of nature. Let's see. We've got other works that this is actually one of my favorite little pieces. I like how intimate it is. Some of these large processes, like the geologic processes and the plate tectonics and the births of suns and all of this, it's really it's very comforting to me, that scale of things. And this little tiny thing is me to hold on to just a little piece of it, in my hand. So a lot of this, some of these other works reference more meteorology. There's cloud formations. There's ways that we track cloud formations. Some of these things will, the other pieces farther down. They've got references. This one has cartography references in it. There is volcanic drawings of how the plate tectonics are working. There's weather fronts coming through. And this is all symbols that we use that are removed from the actual thing that's happening. This one in particular has a lot more map references. There's, the bottom of the ocean. There's ridges and rises on the bottom of the ocean, some of this. There's lines that reference, I think what is this, the Tropic of Capricorn. There's just different things in here that I'm fascinated by maps and how we completely make this symbol reference that we can put on a piece of paper and walk around and navigate through. So some of this has more reference to my background in architecture, which is, I became very aware that as I was sitting and doing these drawings, they were complete symbol systems. I never laid hand on a building. And I would hand this off to somebody else to actually make this. And I did everything in this very remote, removed symbol. I did it all in scale. I had particular symbols that you use to show electrical, to show your HVAC, and it's all symbols. And you lay this all down on a two-dimensional surface and hand it off to someone else to make it. So I was very conceptually distanced from the thing I was making. So this one in particular was references the BP oil spill. In this, there are visual things that point to the well, the depth of the well, the different things that people suggested on how to fix the problem. There's a map of the affected areas. There's also in here the molecular structure of crude oil. There are references to BP stock prices bottoming out. So all of this, and all in this, the liquid graphite really very fluid. Comes across as that boiling oil underneath of all this. Everything under this beautifully pristine horizon line that you'd have no idea what's going on. And these are all the drawings that I got off of the internet, talking about what we're going to do, how we're going to fix it, and it's all very symbolic, but using symbols on how to show people what to do. I mean, they can't obviously show you what they're going to do, so they've got all these technical drawings that look all neat and clean, and it's never quite that neat and clean. So, the other body of work is called Quilts and Buildings, and this actually approaches the division between the body and the mind, but it approaches it from the opposite side. These pieces over here were designed very tight pattern to start with, and then in execution I loosened them up. I gave them a great deal of texture so they become more physical and less idea driven. This is called the double standard, and this is actually the size of a full bed, and it's loosely based on quilts. Some of the other pieces are a little tighter reference to quilts. But I like the male, the female, the yin and yang on this piece in particular. The other ones are a little more specific to quilts. This one is actually the size of a twin bed. And it also references architecture. It is approximately the size of a door, but it also has a lot of the textures that I remember from my grandmother's house. The paint on the walls that's been there a very long time. And I'm rather drawn to old buildings. Things that have a history, a little bit of a soul to them. I've taken floor plans from, this is actually a floor plan of the Bill Lowe Gallery, and I've taken it and turned it into an abstract painting. I've taken this very analytical, abstract drawing, this very symbolic drawing, and have turned it into a thing that has a presence in its own. The texture is, people want to reach out and touch these things. They're so highly textured that I want to make these stop being representations of something else as much as be so textured that they become something in themselves. They're an object. This is the largest of the pieces. This is a king-size bed. This is a quilt that would fit a king-size bed. And it was, it's a very regular pattern. And I took this and saw just how far I could keep within that very regular pattern and still open it up enough texturally to make it become less than just, be more than just the pattern. And then there's a couple pieces on the end. This piece is the size of a baby quilt. This is also references floor patterns, tiles on the floor. So there's always a reference between quilts and parts of buildings. Just I was a planner for a lot of years, and this the idea of laying down patterns of things and putting things next to things and moving them around on a 2D surface comes very naturally to me. Just I spent 20 years doing that, working in justice and healthcare, and the idea of putting down quilts too, sort of moving things around and the pattern, the repetition of the pattern, I like a great deal. So that's where both of these, the buildings and the quilts, seem to come together in these pieces. And these are small little quilt blocks that would ideally, if you were making a quilt, would just repeat these. But they're very, very textured and very individualized here. And the last piece is also a baby-sized quilt, but it also references windows. And again, it's very, very textured, and I want to make this more of an object and less of a reference to some illusionistic space. And to have a presence of its own rather than I want this one to stand on the physical side, where the pieces on the other side from the schematics are the physical with the mental imposed over it. So these start with the mental, a very rigid pattern, something I'm doing, and then I go and put the physical on it. So the current body of work is the black and white work, and I like the simplicity of the black and white, the monochromatic, and I think it shows up so much more of the organic quality of the drawing underneath of it. And I also like the idea that it's taking drawing and painting and asking someone, is this a drawing or is this a painting? And why is there a boundary between those things? You know, what are the function of those things? So these are drawn paintings. I don't know what they are. I kind of like the idea that they're neither and they're both. So.